Deep in the heart of the Whisper Woods lived a bear named Barry. Now, Barry was no ordinary bear. He was a bubblegum-loving, tap-dancing, martini-sipping bear with a heart of gold and a taste for the finer things in life. His cave was filled with the finest bubblegum, which he'd used to blow gargantuan bubbles that floated above his head like iridescent balloons. The mere sight of those bubbles floating through the woods brought joy to every creature's face. One day Barry was blowing bubbles as usual when a small, timid voice interrupted his reverie. "Mr. Barry," the voice squeaked, "I couldn't help but notice you've been blowing those bubbles for quite some time now. Do you mind if I ask why?" It was Penelope the porcupine, her quills trembling slightly as she shuffled closer to Barry. Now, Barry had always been a bit of a show-off, and the thought of having an audience for his bubble blowing greatly pleased him, so he puffed out his chest and said, "Why?" "Because it's a beautiful sunny day, and I feel like making bubbles." "What's it to you?" Penelope recoiled slightly at Barry's gruff tone, but she took a deep breath and replied, "Well, I saw a flyer earlier today for the annual forest festival, and I thought perhaps you might be interested." She held out a crumpled piece of paper for Barry to see. The forest festival was an event that happened once a year where all the woodland creatures got together to celebrate the forest they all called home. There were singing contests, poetry readings, even a piting contest. And this year, the festival organizers had added a new event, the bubble blowing contest. First prize was a whole bar of the finest chocolate. Second prize was an engraved silver goblet. And third prize, well, that was a mystery, but the organizer promised it would be delightful. Barry's eyes gleamed at the thought of winning the chocolate bar. All those years of blowing bubbles had finally paid off. But then he looked at Penelope, and her quills had drooped and her eyes were downcast. "What's wrong, Penelope?" he asked, suddenly feeling guilty for his earlier outburst. "Oh, I was hoping you'd enter the bubble-blowing contest," she said quietly. "Without you, Mr. Barry, who else is going to win?" Barry knew he could blow the biggest bubble in the forest, maybe even bigger than his house. But the idea of competing against the woodland creatures, well, it didn't appeal to him. Then he saw the hopeful look on Penelope's face and thought about all the times she'd come up to his cave just to watch him blow bubbles. Didn't want to disappoint her. So Barry did something completely out of character, took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and said, "All right, Penelope, let's do this." The day of the festival arrived, and with it, a crowd of excited woodland creatures. Squirrels chattered in the trees, rabbits thumped their feet, and even the shy field mice peeked out from under a bush. Then it was Barry's turn. He took a piece of gum, put it in his mouth, and blew a bubble. It was huge, round, and a beautiful shade of pink. The crowd gasped as the bubble floated above Barry's head and slowly drifted toward the judge's table. But then disaster struck. A small twig had fallen into the bubble, ruining its shape and causing it to pop. Barry was devastated. All his years of practice, all that bubble blowing, and he hadn't won even third prize. The other contestants blew their bubbles, and one by one, they too popped. Just when Barry thought things couldn't get worse, a voice boomed through the woods. "That's it, everyone. Your bubbles have all popped. Now it's time for the truly spectacular." It was Bruno the Badger, the self-proclaimed greatest bubble blower in the forest. He took a piece of gum, put it in his mouth, and blew a bubble. It was huge, round, and a beautiful shade of brown. The crowd cheered as the bubble floated above Bruno's head and slowly drifted toward the judge's table. Then it popped, but not before releasing a shower of sparks. Bruno had put a tiny bit of his famous badger fire in the bubble. The judges huddled together and announced Bruno, the badger, as the winner. As the crowd began to thin out, Barry sat on a nearby log, feeling dejected. Suddenly, he felt a small prick on his shoulder. He turned around and saw Penelope standing there with a small smile on her face. "You may not have one, Mr. Barry," she said, "but in my book you'll always be the best bubble blower in the Whisper Woods." Then she did something that made Barry's heart melt. She hugged him. It was the best day of Barry the Bear's life. Maybe winning wasn't everything after all.